So this was our second free-flowing conversation that we created with Mr. Abhijit Chavda, who's an absolutely loved guest on the Ranveer Show. This time we spoke about the world of science. And if you're someone who says, I never enjoyed science in school, I never enjoyed maths in school, therefore I'm not going to enjoy this podcast, hold up. That's what Abhijit Chavda is for. That's what Ranveer Allahbadia is for. Allahbadia. Allahbadia is for. We try taking subjects that would probably seem boring or would be introduced to you in the wrong way, twist them around and show you the reality of how it applies to your life, the reality of how it applies in the modern day, and the reality of how these subjects apply to the future. Remember, guys, the 20s and 30s are going to be a very drastic 2 decades. Lots of stuff is going to change. And change in human culture always begins with science. That's what this particular episode's about. So remember to watch this one till the end, listen to it till the end. And of course, check out all the other episodes we've created with Abhijit Chavda. TRS is a Spotify exclusive now, which means that every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. If you're someone who enjoys science, if you're someone who enjoys mathematics, or if you're just someone who's curious to learn more, this is the episode for you. Enjoy yourselves. Abhijit Chavda, sir, welcome to the Ranveer Show again.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back.
You know, usually we have these one-way conversations where I say, okay, sir, this is the topic. Let's break it down. Before every single podcast that we've done till this point, I thought let's change it up today and let's just get to know you a little bit. Let's have a conversation.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like whenever we stop rolling the cameras when we're recording these podcasts, we go outside, we have a cup of coffee, and even those conversations are great. We end up talking about some deep stuff.
Yes.
So let me begin by asking you how your life has changed through YouTube, because I feel like I discovered you through YouTube. And then since we started doing these episodes, it's gotten even further in terms of your brand. Then you've started doing your own podcast and your own like videos on your channel. And things have just changed in the last 6 months for you.
Yeah.
So what's changed?
So I was a very reluctant YouTuber actually. I mean, I started making videos. I made one video, I think, in the beginning of 2020. And then I gave it up for almost a year. In December 2020, I released this documentary style video about Genghis Khan, which completely blew up.
Yeah.
After that, again, I kind of didn't do anything for 6-7 months. And I think after I came on your podcast, I thought that actually people do want to hear what I have to say.
Yeah.
So I thought, let me start something again on my channel. Yeah. And then it's just taken off. So the past 3 months have been absolutely very busy. I'm just working. That's it.
Why don't you tell people what you do, you know, for a living? Like, what's your profession? Like what do you do? Because again, history, astrophysics, there's a lot of different things. I know what you do, but I think it's interesting for you to share it with the people.
So if somebody asks me who I am and what do you do, I don't really have a ready answer, because typically people would fall into a certain category. I am a banker, or I'm a software guy, or whatever. I have been into so many things. So if I were to ask myself what I am, I'm a scientist, I'm a physicist. That's what I am at my core. But my life has taken me through various paths, lots of different paths. So the intention from the very beginning always was to be a scientist, a physicist. So I did my studies, my MSc and all that. And then I decided for some time to go into software because I wanted to become financially independent and all that.
The coding.
Coding, yeah.
You're a coder as well.
I've spent 10 years in the IT industry.
Okay.
I've been a coder, I've been a programmer, I've been a project manager and tester and whatnot.
Wow.
Business analyst. Sab kiya hai. So I did that, but I also did a PhD. So I enrolled for a PhD, I think in 2003 or 4. I submitted my thesis in 2008.
What was the PhD in?
It's about dark matter, all that, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, dark matter and all that. So I never got the PhD.
Okay.
So the university kept me hanging for 10 years and eventually I said I don't want it anymore. So that's the kind of story it is. So I have finished the PhD, but I haven't got the degree in my hand.
Got it.
So that's the thing. And so I worked in IT for like a decade.
Which university was it?
It's one of the big universities in India.
Okay.
I don't want to take the name.
Okay,
Doesn't
okay,
matter.
okay.
It's not important.
Okay.
So that's what. And I worked in IT for a decade. After that, I went freelance because I was tired of making money for others. So, so I did that for some time and I've been doing research in history. I've been publishing articles and things. I've also been publishing some research papers in physics. So it's been a mixed bag. My dream was to be a university professor, believe it or not. Like, so sitting in the middle of a room with lots of books and nobody to disturb me. That's all I wanted. Do research and have lots of books. But life takes you in different directions.
Now you're a YouTuber.
Now I'm a YouTuber.
You're sort of a university professor. I think it's like a new age university professor.
New age kind of university. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Like I think growing up, even I had these dreams of being heard, maybe. That was my big dream, and that's what YouTube eventually gave me. It gave me a platform to be heard. My voice was heard. Which is why, even though this job is intense, it has a lot of work that goes into it. It's a fun job at the end of the day because the work is very fulfilling.
How fun is it? I mean, is it always fun? I mean, doesn't it get intense? Don't you get burnt out sometimes?
I met a childhood friend yesterday and he asked me the same question, and I met him after a long time, and he asked me how it's going. So to be honest, these are conversations I've had with the two boys in this room, Sanchit and Akki. Like they live with me, they breathe with, they know everything about me. They know like every corner of my brain, because that's what video editing and working together does to you.
Absolutely.
You guys know each other too intensely. So I feel we've started vlogs on our Hindi channel, right?
Right.
I don't mind doing the podcasts because podcasts are my passion. It's like just great conversations like this and you're putting it out there for the audiences. Plus, I get to learn so much on a personal level.
Yes.
Like, they say, oh, you listen to podcasts to get smarter. Now, I'm doing like 2 of those every week at least. So the amount of information that's flowing into my head, it's fantastic. It's like a brain orgasm every time I finish a podcast.
Right.
Even my worst podcasts have taught me something. Something or the other. It's the vlogs that I'm a little confused about. Do you know what vlogs are?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, like where you just show like one day or one event in your life.
Yes.
So I have a bittersweet relationship with them, and I've discussed this with my co-founders as well. The bitterness of it is that I feel like I'm giving away a part of my soul, my personal side, I can't explain it. I've not been able to articulate it. And I'm even contemplating going for therapy because of this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I feel like we started the vlogs to promote Level and Big Brain, which are the 2 new businesses.
Yes.
And until they reach a certain level of financial stability, I'm going to keep continuing the vlogs.
Right.
But while I'm reaching there, the bitterness of it is that I feel that there's an exchange of like I'm giving away my soul a little bit. The sweetness of it is that I feel it strengthens the community you've already built out, and I'm enjoying that. Plus, we're documenting the most intense phase of my life, which is all these businesses are being built, teams are being built, there are events happening. There's so much rapidness.
Yes, yes.
So I think when I look back, I'll be happy that I did this. But right now, it's this strange, I don't know how I feel about it.
So are you vlogging every day or once a week, or how is it?
I'm not vlogging every day. I think I would have lost my mind if I was doing that. And I have too much respect for daily vloggers. There are people who do that.
There are people who do that, yes.
Yeah, people who show their entire family life, people who show like literally every moment of their day, from the moment they wake up. Not for me. Yeah,
I agree.
It's just, you as a creative person, at least for me, the way my creativity works is I need some time where I'm doing nothing.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're just looking out of the window, you're actually working. You're contemplating something. Something's going on in there.
Yeah.
That's what non-creatives don't understand, isn't it? I mean, when a scientist is staring out of the window for 6 hours, he's actually working, or she's actually working.
Yeah.
So that's what most people don't realize. That creative work is all about thinking.
Tell me what this is. The scientist angle you spoke about, that also involves a lot of creativity.
It's all about creation. I mean, there are all kinds of scientists. There are certain scientists who go to university and teach, and that's all they do. But real scientist, I would say that a real intellectual is somebody who produces something new and something valuable that can benefit society. New ideas or new theories or whatever. So that takes a lot of contemplation. I mean, you have all this existing body of work that your predecessors have created. You're standing on the shoulders of giants. But you have to create something new. Unless you create something unique and original out of your own intellect, you're not a real intellectual. You're just somebody who's regurgitating old stuff. So to create something new, especially as a scientist, you need a lot of contemplation. Especially when you are a theoretical physicist or a mathematician. There's a lot of work that happens in your mind. Oftentimes it's subconscious. You are working when you're asleep. Sometimes you see a dream and then you grab a pencil or a pen and then you jot things down.
Has that happened to you?
Sometimes it has. It has happened once or twice to me, that sort of thing.
Yeah, this is what I used to find fascinating about mathematics when I was in college or school. I got into mathematics probably in the 9th and 10th standard after trigonometry was introduced.
I see.
And I realized how much trigonometry is there in our daily life.
Yes.
Everything's trigonometry. Basically, at the cost of making this podcast a little nerdy, which I believe it will become, and I'm glad it will.
Yeah.
It's little things like height. What's your distance from the height of a building? Therefore, what's the relationship with all the mathematical formulas of that equation when you're just staring at a building? And then I realized that the whole world, including these lights that are throwing light upon us, this is probably an octagon, right? Yeah, it's an octagon. And there's so much geometry, there's so much maths around us, which made me understand that the nature of mathematics is truth. As in, all around us, there are equations, there is theories, etc., etc. So I have two questions for you. One, what's your vibe about mathematics firstly, like in terms of this was my vibe what I just told you, and the second is how much more is there to discover? Is there an infinite amount to discover from now on?
So how did I discover, how did I get into mathematics? I mean, I have always been scientifically minded. I've always been fascinated by the stars and the cosmos and galaxies and all that. And that naturally, if I wanted to pursue this field as a professional, I would have to learn mathematics because that's non-negotiable.
Yeah, just 1 second. I just want to mention one thing. There's some people will tune out at this point because people have a negative relationship with mathematics. Did I up till the age of 13. After which I realized that mathematics is all about practice. Jitna you practice, utna you'll get better at it. It's like lifting a heavy weight.
Absolutely, that's what it is.
And once you lift enough weight up to a point, you become good at maths and then you start developing a relationship with it. So anyone who says, oh, I'm naturally bad at math, you've just not practiced enough. And keep an open mind about this particular conversation.
See, nobody is naturally bad at mathematics. It's our teachers who have ruined mathematics for us.
Okay.
To learn mathematics properly, you just need the basic fundamentals down good. If you're taught addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fractions, those fundamentals properly, you can never go wrong with mathematics. It's in your formative stages that mathematics is ruined for you. And that's why people are so scared of it. It's actually the easiest thing to learn if you're taught properly.
Yeah.
So even I had bad teachers. I remember when I was a kid, I was once trying to learn decimal points, and in a problem, I put 3 decimal points or something, So I also was at a point in time quite bad because I was not taught properly. But eventually I discovered what mathematics actually is. Like you said, it's the language of the universe. It describes everything around us. Once you make the connection, it becomes beautiful. And there are certain formulas and all that bring out the beauty of mathematics, like Maclaurin's formula. And there are so many more. I'll not go into that. But over time, eventually, by the time I was in college, I was quite good at it. And I wanted to get deeper into it. Mathematics actually can become an obsession. If you want to be a theoretical physicist, you have to learn only a certain amount of mathematics and then learn as you go, as you need. But if you just go deep into it, you'll become a pure mathematician and you may lose touch with reality because all pure mathematicians live in an alternate universe.
Why? What happens?
Because they are doing math for the sake of doing math. They are seeking problems to solve. And certain problems take years or decades to solve. Like, for example, Fermat's last theorem, it took people, I think, decades or more than a century to solve. So certain problems are intractable. Certain problems are very complicated. Some are in hyperspace and multidimensional spaces that we cannot even perceive.
You mean like parallel universes?
No, it's about hyperspace. Means we perceive the world in 3 dimensions: length, breadth, height. A 4th dimension may be time. But you can do calculations in n dimensions, like 10 dimensions or 12 dimensions, which oftentimes is just theoretical. It may not really have any applications, or maybe not for 100 years. For example, the work Ramanujan did 100 years ago, now we are seeing some applications of that in fields like string theory, etc. So sometimes mathematicians are always most likely a century ahead of the time, especially the best mathematicians. So your work is going to be fruitless in your lifetime, but in the future, it may be useful to to the people who come in the future.
Who pays them?
A mathematician, they don't produce anything tangible, so universities have to pay them, and they should not expect anything in return from mathematicians, like any discovery or invention. It's just abstract, That's what it is.
So they teach, I'm guessing, to earn their living.
Yeah, they have to teach to earn their living. You have to dance for your living, that sort of thing, You You have to sing for your supper, that sort of thing. So that's the trade-off in academia. If you want to be a researcher, do research, then you have to spend a certain number of hours per week teaching and grading papers and all, doing all that drudgery, mundane work. But that's the payoff.
You said this thing about a mathematician's work is only applicable 100 years later. So the stuff you said about Ramanujan, it's used in modern day
String theory.
String theory.
Yes.
Now, what do you think today's mathematician's work will be used for 100 years later? It's unpredictable? Or you think it will be used to find some deeper form of physics or some deeper discovery in physics?
It has to be in the form of some deeper discovery in physics. Right now, what we have, the major problem we are facing is the mystery of gravitation. The 21st century was supposed to be the century in which we discover what gravitation truly is, a quantum theory of gravity at the ultra microscopic scale. But we haven't been able to make a single breakthrough. So I'm thinking that the mathematics that is being done now in the future may hopefully be used in that to figure out what gravity is like at the quantum scale. That is one of the biggest intractable problems we are facing today, right now.
So the question I have for you is about modern day scientists and your one. Couple of questions. What's the life like of a scientist? And the second question is, all the modern day scientists, are they working in towards different, I'm sure they're working towards different goals. But in the world of science, what's the main hot topic right now?
So typically in science, it's all about inventions and discoveries. You want to solve pressing problems. So for instance, how to invent a better form of space travel, for instance. It's all about technology. The most lucrative science is something that has immediate, tangible applications. For instance, quantum computing, superconducting computing, machine learning, all of this has immediate applications. Space travel also.
As in what's on the brink, what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years, the science that will assist all that stuff.
Yes, it will help us go to the next level of computing and so on. So those are the things that have a great deal of tangible, immediate benefits. But then there is another category of scientists who are theoreticians. For instance, Einstein, he came out with the general theory of relativity. He predicted that gravitational waves should exist, but they were not discovered until 100 years after he made the prediction. So theoretical physicists are usually much ahead of the time, but their work also has a great deal of importance. But it's not immediately beneficial to humanity. It's a long-term investment. So scientists are of different kinds. Some are experimental scientists, some are working on various technologies, and some are working in their heads, the theoreticians. So I belong to that category. I'm a theoretical physicist, So I don't produce anything that has any tangible, immediate benefits for humanity. But maybe in the future it may help.
So you'll basically think about something from a different angle. You'll say, oh wait, what about this way of looking at it? And then come up with some creative solution to bring you from point A to B, write it down on paper, and then maybe 100 years later, there'll be an application of what you've done.
Most likely. So right now, one of the major problems we are facing is that in the past 40 years, there's not been a single new discovery in physics that can be proven. I mean, string theory has failed. It has produced no actual verifiable evidence. So for the past 40 years, physics has hit a brick wall. There's been no progress whatsoever in the fundamental level of physics. So that is something that people are working for, and that's all about gravity, dark matter, dark energy, and all that. So yeah, these are intractable problems. People have come up with all kinds of ideas, but none of these ideas has been proven. So that's what is the major focus in theoretical physics right now. And maybe if somebody finds something, we may be able to use it in some manner, maybe 50 or 100 years down the line, perhaps.
So outside of universities, who hires scientists? Is it billionaires? Is it the government?
It's usually tech companies and all that,
Okay.
So theoretical physicists and mathematicians are only hired by universities. Nobody else hires those people. Unless mathematicians, some forms of mathematics have applications on the stock market, in finance, in economics. So those are extremely high paid jobs. But your typical mathematician who does abstract research will not find employment anywhere outside university. But that's a long-term investment for society, because that will eventually, hopefully, have some kind of application in the real world.
Yeah, that's also one of those situations where you're born with certain gifts. So you have a natural flair for something. You discover that early in life and you say, okay, that's my path, and that's where I want to go.
If you're lucky, you go into that,
Yeah. So I know how the amateurs view Einstein and Tesla. But how does the world of science view these two people? Like, was there something actually extremely different about their heads?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what the brain structure, but there's clearly something absolutely unique about people like Einstein, Bohr, Heisenberg, Dirac, all of these physicists. Somebody like Nikola Tesla, for example, was an inventor.
Is it like the creativity that was admired? Because you said that there is an element of creativity in being a scientist. So is it the creativity you admired about these people?
It's a package deal. There has to be a great deal of creativity. You have to be able to look at things from a completely new perspective that nobody else can imagine. It's also about the discipline to plow through all the equations and all the calculations and not give up when you're not able to find the solution. It's also about the mathematical ability and just your innate ability to understand nature or to glimpse something into nature that others cannot. But that takes a lot. It's a skill it's a talent you may be born with, but unless you have the discipline to learn mathematics for 10, 15 years, you will not be able to bring that to fruition. So it's a package deal. A number of qualities are required.
When you say learn mathematics, you mean like keep practicing, become fast at it, learn multiple formulae.
At the higher levels of physics, it's not about being fast at it. It's about learning newer techniques of mathematics. For instance, Einstein had to learn, I think, tensor calculus, which he did not know at all. So it took him a long time to learn that. It's a very complex form of mathematics, tensor calculus. It's very involved. And Heisenberg, when he was trying to solve the problem of quantum mechanics, he came up with matrix mechanics. He had to learn what matrices are, which was very not very well known at that time in the 1930s, I think.
Got it.
So you have to learn new things, So you need that perseverance, and you need to be able to learn things quickly so that you can use them as tools.
So you know how the atom bomb was created back then. Einstein had a role to play in the creation of the atom bomb. What's the next destructive technology that's going to be created according to you? Which has applications in war, applications in destruction, according to you. What's next?
I think right now the most destructive technology is obviously nuclear weapons. In the future, I cannot imagine something that has more destructive power as with the physics that we currently understand. If we can, this is like almost science fiction, but if we can harness the power of antimatter, then that could have a more destructive power than nuclear physics itself. So if you see, antimatter is something that's very volatile. The moment it comes into contact with ordinary matter, it just evaporates, explodes. So to create antimatter in a lab, you need a perfect vacuum, you need magnetic confinement and all that. So those technologies are very futuristic. But if we can do it, if you can harness the power of antimatter, then that could potentially be much more powerful and destructive than nuclear weapons.
So, because again, you're a theoretical physicist, so you have to stay in your mind, you have to stay within your own creativity. I'm going to be rude with you here.
Bolo.
Have you felt like even you started going mad at some point?
No, I haven't ever felt that.
But you've had...
Personally, I haven't felt that.
You had peers who feel like that?
I've heard of many. I haven't personally encountered somebody who has felt this way, at least that I know of. But I've heard of many scientists who have gone through depression and mental problems and much more,
Like why? Why do you think that happens?
I think it's because some people are naturally prone to being depressed and all. And some people, they have extremely unrealistic expectations of themselves. And when they are pursuing something with such dogged determination for so many years and you don't get it, it may cause mental problems. So there's a host of reasons. But there have been scientists who have kind of been driven mad. For example, there was this Italian physicist called Ettore Majorana who disappeared. He was doing work in the 1930s or 20s, I think, sometime around there. He was doing work in particle physics. He was a very influential physicist. He did very good work. But one day he took a boat ride and disappeared, never came back. No one ever knows what happened to him. Maybe he was fed up. Maybe he was depressed. We don't know. But no one knows until today what happened to him. So there have been many cases like this.
Could you highlight like a couple of more things that people on the outside don't understand about the world of science or mathematics like this, sir?
I think in some ways, scientists, especially the theoreticians, are in some way quite similar to artists. Take the example of Vincent van Gogh. He was this tortured genius. So I'm not saying that all scientists are tortured geniuses, but this is another example that brings out the kind of mental turmoil that goes in the minds of extreme geniuses. Then you had John Forbes Nash. Have you seen The Beautiful Mind, that movie?
Yes, yes.
So that is another scientist who developed schizophrenia.
Who developed schizophrenia?
Yes, he was not born with it, but at some point in his life, maybe as a student, he started showing symptoms. So he was under the influence of schizophrenia for many years, for decades.
Do you think it's an outcome of driving your brain in that sixth gear, seventh gear for the sake of science that actually drives you to insanity?
It may be possible for certain unbalanced people, some people who are not able to find some kind of balance in life. I'm not sure what exactly causes schizophrenia, but I'm sure there are certain personality types that are more prone to it. So John Nash was that, but the strange thing is that he was able to recover from it eventually. So after a certain point in his life, after a few decades, he said that whatever I am seeing, I'm going to just reject it and I'm not going to act on it. And then he was able to come back into some kind of academic life. He was even able to receive the Nobel Prize in economics. So there are certain cases like this that are quite striking. So it is a parallel I see between artists, very creative artists. There was this French lady called Séraphine de Senlis. She was an incredible painter. She also had some mental illness, but I get the feeling that some mental illnesses cause certain flights of imagination that would otherwise not be possible. So maybe it is something that afflicts geniuses more than others, but it is a curious phenomenon that one does see from time to time.
Yeah, I don't know whether this was on your podcast or just some article I was reading. I was reading about Da Vinci. How Da Vinci is remembered as an artist, but he actually had drawn out the blueprint of a helicopter and flying devices also. So he was a scientist as much as he was an artist. And he had drawn out the exact human anatomy. He has that, I forgot what it's
Vitruvian Man.
Vitruvian Man, yeah. Where he had mapped out the human anatomy and I think he had mapped out what beauty is or something, right? What was the point of Vitruvian Man?
I think there was something about the golden ratio in there, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, correct. What is the golden ratio?
It's an aesthetic concept. It's a certain ratio of two numbers. I don't remember exactly what it is. It's called phi. And that is something you find in patterns all over nature, whether it is the spiral shape of a seashell, whether it is the patterns in asparagus or broccoli or certain flowers. It's something you see over and over again. And it is something that we find very aesthetic.
Another example of mathematics being all around us, which is what you only understand once you go a little bit into reading about science. And I also read that Da Vinci, when he died, he had a lot of incomplete projects. As in, until the point he was dying, he was still in that search for what is this art around me? What is this mathematics around me? Again, probably a crazy guy, for the lack of a better word.
Well, all geniuses are to some extent crazy, because crazy is something that is not normal. And geniuses are naturally not normal. I think Da Vinci was a genuine polymath. He was great at art. He was great at science. He was great at anatomy. He did dissections. He invented or he imagined certain futuristic instruments and vehicles like helicopters and cannons and military things and all. He also wrote in a very strange way. So he had a lot of projects that were always going on until like you said, until the time he died. And I think that's one of the characteristics of a genius. It's what drives you forward. If you have a multiplicity of projects going on at the same time, then you will always have some avenue in which to unleash your creativity. If you get jaded with this or bored with this, you pick something else up. I think Isaac Asimov was also this sort of a person. He was a science fiction writer. He was also a physicist. I think he wrote more books than any other human being in the amount of time he lived. I think he was writing a book every 2 or 3 months or something. So his literary output was enormous. And he said that the key to creativity is to have a number of projects going on at the same time. If you get writer's block on one thing, leave it aside for a while, start something else, or start working on what's incomplete over here. So that is the kind of approach that certain people have. And I think it's if you can take it, if your mind can take that sort of
load,
then it works for you.
What's your opinion on your own state of mind, sir? Because again, you are into physics, you're into mathematics, you're into science, you're also into history, you're into geopolitics, and you're into these concepts in a very deep way. So what goes on in your head, and how do you balance things out?
See, I'm the kind of person, I'm not a multitasker. there is this concept in project management of multitasking. Do 5 things at the same time. It doesn't work for me. I don't think it works for many people.
Yeah.
I like to focus on one thing at one time. I have a number of things at the back of my mind. I am a very curious person. I'm naturally curious. I have curiosity about all kinds of things. That's why I've been able to learn so much, because I've been reading all my life. But when I'm working on one thing, I can only focus on that. I need to keep everything else at the back of my mind, or shut it out for some time. Otherwise, it's going to distract me.
Yeah.
But
This is why I feel you and me can talk to each other easily. There are these parallels between you and me in some ways, like you like learning about multiple subjects, like delving into different things. I'm not a multitasker at all. I'm not a multitasker to the degree where if I'm writing a text message to someone and if my mom and sister are talking at the back, I have to ask them to just stay quiet
Same
for 1 minute until I finish the text message. Like utna, I have to be in one thing completely. But in saying that, honestly, I have felt my mind slipping away lately. I don't know what it is.
in what way?
It's the same thing about, what you said about Isaac Asimov, that you do multiple projects at the same time. This is where I feel the most fulfilled, when there's multiple businesses. I feel business is also a form of creativity and your own thoughts expressing themselves in the real world.
It is,
right?
it is, yes.
Or your own
Creativity, isn't it?
creativity expressing itself as real world things which add value. It's just, it has that element of money and value adds attached to it.
It's a way of keeping score, isn't it? Money.
What do you mean?
I mean, money, the amount of money you're making out of it, it tells you whether you're going in the right direction or
Yeah.
not, and what score you've kept. It's kind of keeping score.
Yeah, it's as who it's Nawal Ravikant said this, that all of us throughout our lives just need to create games for ourselves and keep ourselves entertained through those games. So content creation as a job, it pays well. But I think very early on, I realized that you cannot use money as a driving force. And you have to use probably two things. And this is maybe the spiritual stuff talking. One is creativity. Again, you have to put the creativity into something constantly. Otherwise, you'll go crazy. And I remember in school and college, I was an aggressive person. Physical fights, verbal fights, emotional fights with myself. Now, when I look back, I realize that was just the creativity going crazy inside me because I didn't have an avenue to express it. And this is like right after first grade, right? Where I used to get so frustrated with the education I was getting because it was confined to boxes. Like in every class in the first grade, I would take a blank paper, I'd carry it from my home and draw out robots that I would design. This is how a robot would look. I draw out 6 robots. So I draw out weapons. Like it was an aggressive childhood just because of creativity being blocked.
Stifled.
Once YouTube started, I felt like I was a bird where the cage had just opened up and I was flying in the open world. And I was getting to express my creativity in the form of a career. The higher form of that, again, once spirituality came in my life, I realized, okay, God's given you this gift of creativity. What are you going to do with it? Content creation pays well. It probably pay my team well in the long term as well. Content creation careers are nice, even if in the long term you can sustain yourself. But it's not just about taking care of your own team. If you've been given a gift which is constantly growing, like our numbers are constantly rising since 6 years, what more can you do with it? Can you create an impact in people's mental health? Can you create an impact in the way people look at the world? Can you create a mass number of jobs? Your team will be taken care of, but aim for that higher goal of like, I want to change the country. I want to help the villages of this country be self-sufficient. Can you do that? And that's where I really started finding joy. And also, there was this point in my early career where I had a choice between going into films as an actor or doing business. And I chose business because of my circumstances that time, the person I was with, the influences around me, the things I was reading. Business seemed fun. And I'm glad I did that. Not just because it uses my natural ability, but because I feel when you're just acting, it's a good profession and it has the potential to create impact through stories and through fiction. Like when I look at some inspirational influences in my life, I think of Laksh and Akshay Kumar and these people who have set certain thought patterns in my life. So it has its own purpose. But I feel with business, you're not just living your own life. You're living the life of all your team members. You're living the life of all the people that your business influences. So if your business does some good shit in the world, be it renewable energy, be it creating jobs, be it making the world a better place, making the world a more positive place, it's a better form of existence. And maybe these are artificial concepts that I've created around me, but these concepts are giving me peace at this stage and it's keeping my sanity in check. Because I have felt my mind go to moments of insanity, which express itself through addiction. I had like huge addiction problems in the past. Was way more into cannabis than you can imagine. Like just heavily into it. And I felt like I was into that because again, that used to keep me sane. Uh, Now it's like the meditation again, which I'm aggressively into. And I'm probably just into it because I feel like that's why I've gravitated towards the meditation as well. It's settled the losing my mind kind of vibe. Can't explain it in any other reason. I've started reading the Gita recently, again, because it's such a heavy piece of text that the heaviness of it just anchors you. It gives you thought fodder, which also made me think of spiritualism or, spiritual thought in general. Maybe that's the purpose of spiritual thought and spiritualism being a part of the human experience. That human beings are meant to go crazy and you're meant to like ground yourself through jobs, through activities, through purposes, through thought fodder. Otherwise, in your natural state, you're meant to go crazy. And maybe it's just a theory. Maybe the world of scientists, because they're supposed to look at the world or whatever's around us in its most natural, real state, they're supposed to keep unearthing the realities of it. They make their whole life about the natural core, and that's why they lose themselves. Maybe.
I think it works. This maybe this issue afflicts people who have intense pursuits or intense mindsets, people who think deeply or people who pursue things deeply. I'm sure every mind has a certain threshold beyond which, if you push it, you may enter the realm of insanity, like you said. So, yes, we need to all find whatever works best for us. Meditation works, I think, for everybody, but there are different forms of meditation. There is Vipassana, there is a Hatha Yoga, and there is much more. So everybody needs to find what grounds them and gives them a purpose that connects them to something larger than them. Maybe it ties you back to those who came before you, or maybe you're working for the future inhabitants of the planet. Find some bigger purpose and work towards it. I am sure everybody can do that.
Yeah.
Not just scientists or artists or creators, but I am sure everybody can find that in some way. And that is what I think. These days we hear about this problem of mental health a lot. I think the pandemic has created this issue to a great deal because people are confined and they're disrupted out of their normal routines and all that. And maybe it's left certain people feeling aimless or unable to fulfill whatever purpose they thought they had. So I think we need to have some fallback mechanism, some fail-safe, something that we can rely on in any moment of stress. I think these techniques are taught to soldiers also, that when you are in a certain conflict area and you need to sleep after a few hours, find a way of calming yourself down, even if bullets are flying overhead. I think there's a lot that connects all of these things together. It's about finding what works best for you. I'm sure everybody at some point in their life can fall into the void
Of insanity.
of insanity, at least to some extent. You might dip your toes into that. And I'm sure it's not a good experience.
What do you think happens in the mind of an insane person? Like when you actually see, you see some of these people in Bombay just walking on the road. They're probably, unfortunately disowned by their own families. What do you think goes on?
I think their perception of reality is different from what we would ordinarily perceive.
Many of them are definitely hallucinating. They're
Yes.
walking through like some sort of a, I don't know, for lack of a better word, LSD trip in real life.
Maybe they perceive visions, hallucinations, like I said. Maybe they hear voices or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe they just see the world in a different way that we can't imagine. But there is clearly an altered perception of reality. Some, like you said, LSD trips can do that, I've heard, or DMT or whatever. But some people, maybe their brain chemistry is altered or something has set something off in their minds. It is obviously an unnatural state of being. We're not supposed to be in that. But in this modern stressful world, it does seem to surface quite often, especially in large urban areas and all that,
But I think there's a shamanic saying about ayahuasca that not everyone is ready for it. Not because it is a strong experience, but because it will reveal realities that are already around you, which you may not be ready to experience yourself. So maybe those people who are so-called insane are just able to see realities that they're not ready for. And the Gita also talks about this. So again, this is a very raw form of what I read recently. So the way I read spiritual books is I'll read actively the page I'm at, and then just to excite myself and keep myself motivated, because it can get extremely heavy to just be in that section of the book. Sometimes you're not able to absorb completely what's written in that section. Therefore, you just want to go ahead a little bit to keep yourself entertained and then come back to that active section to understand it when you're ready. So that's where I'm at. I'm at a very difficult intro part of it where I'm trying to understand what the basis of it is. Fascinating, by the way. Maybe that's a whole other podcast. But later on, I read that it's important for human beings to do 3 things in particular. 1, be a kind human. Be kind to your equals. Treat others as you treat yourself. Okay. 2, treat lower beings with a sense of respect. Animals, serve animals. That's why in Hindu dharma they say, okay, you feed dogs, you get your leftover food at home, you go feed an animal. You serve lower forms of life because they are instinct driven. They don't have the perception that you have, and you're supposed to be nicer to them, and that's a good form of karma. And the third one is you feed the higher beings as well, because you're not the highest being, and there are higher beings around you, which in the same way that you would treat a dog or a cow or an insect well, they will treat you in that same way, and they're doing things for you that you don't know, which again goes into quantum field theory, speaking to the scientists inside you. Do you believe that there's higher beings around us?
As a scientist, I would say that we have no evidence of that, but I am perfectly open to the possibility. I don't know. I have never experienced it personally, but I would be very happy if this was to be true. And I am certainly open to the possibility, because science explains just a small fraction of the actual universe out there. So there is so much that we completely don't understand at all. And therefore, it's definitely possible that there are realms of the universe out there that are beyond our perception, but they do exist possibly.
Interstellar shows this visually, like in the climax of Interstellar. I think we've spoken about this on
Tesseract.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where higher beings are communicating to Matthew McConaughey and his family and guiding Matthew McConaughey in his own life. But because they are so high, like they're such higher beings, they're not able to manifest themselves as anything and show themselves to the human being, because the human being may not be able to be perceptive enough to understand, okay, there's a higher being around me. And they show themselves sort of in the form of experiences and guidance. Keeping that in mind, does science say anything about some sort of dimensions which are beyond human understanding?
Well, mathematically, it's certainly possible to calculate various laws of physics in higher dimensions. We think of 3 or 4 dimensions. You can have 11-dimensional physics as well. So these dimensions may or may not exist. They definitely can be constructed mathematically.
So can you handhold us through, like, a very amateur version of this? Like, okay, so your 3 dimensions are your length, breadth, height. 4th dimension is the so-called time. The so-called time, because we don't know if time exists or not, which is also a fantastic concept.
Yes.
Time is something we've made for convenience, right?
It seems to be that way. We don't know for sure what it is.
Like, what is time? Like, okay, as an astrophysicist, what do you think time is?
We do not really know what it is. We use it as a dimension. We use it as a dimension in general relativity, but we don't know what it consists of. Is it an emergent property of the universe? Are there regions of the universe where there is no time? Or is it something that is quantum? Are there atoms and molecules of time? We do not know this. We don't have the least foggiest idea of what time actually is. Does it come out of somewhere? Does it emerge from the quantum reality? Or is it something that's inherent to this universe? Does time flow differently in a different universe? We don't have the least idea as of today. Time is a very foggy concept in physics. Nobody has an answer.
It's something that physicists are trying to understand better.
Well, they would like to, but we are not making any headway in that regard as of today.
Maybe time is a higher being that we're not able to understand.
Who knows?
Like, have you seen the B.R. Chopra Mahabharat where they go, "Main samay hu"?
Yes, of course.
I mean, that's a great example of the concept of time. So, but like, could you actually expand on how does time make physics more convenient or mathematics more convenient? It gives structure to things like speed, I'm guessing, and it gives structure to progression.
Yes, so you have the past, you have the future, and you have the present, and speed depends on time. Speed is distance divided by the time you take to cover the distance. Velocity is the derivative of that in calculus. So it is something we do perceive to past. We have memories of things that happened in the past. We can anticipate things that will happen in the future. So it does seem to exist. We do have records of things that happened many, many years ago, millions of years ago also. So from our experienced reality, it does appear that time is something that exists. But how many beings do actually perceive time? Can a dog perceive time the way we do? Can a butterfly perceive time? Or do they just live in a present reality? Do they have memories of the past? Does a butterfly have a memory? Do bees have memories? And we do know that dogs and cats and such more intelligent animals do seem to have memories because they recognize people and so on. So they also seem to have an experience of time. So time does seem to exist at our level in our experienced reality. But where does it originate from? Is it something that was born with the universe? Is it something that will end with the universe? Does it exist beyond the universe? Does it emerge out of the fabric of space and becomes time and space-time? Is it a quantum phenomenon? Is it tied to entropy and disorder? These are only questions that we have.
And that's the only way we can approach it. We don't even know where to begin approaching it.
Yes, we have to approach it from a number of different angles, and thus far we have not made any headway.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend who's been studying a lot of neuroscience lately. That's been the new obsession for me, like getting deeper into neuroscience. And he mentioned something very incredible. Okay, so you mentioned about dogs and butterflies perceiving time. So if you want to understand a little bit about how humans perceive time, you should know that the part of your brain where time is processed is the same part of your brain where space is processed. So they know this. The world of neuroscience knows this, which means, again, time-space continuum is also linked, which means that when you go to a new space, so say you're in Bombay, you're going through the pandemic, you're working, time seems to be going by fast. Where's the whole pandemic gone? It was just March 2020 right now. And we're in September 2021, but it feels like March 2020 just happened. Because time flew by. But in the middle, when you went to Goa for that 1 week, when you went to the mountains for those 10 days, why did time seem so stretched out and so beautiful? Because your mind was actually perceiving a new space. It was perceiving distance. You weren't stuck in a room. Because space got altered, time also got altered. Because space got larger, possibly time got larger. And because time got larger, you had more mental room to recover, which is why vacations feel nicer for your brain. That it stretches out time. A new space creates new time, which feels larger, just like the space. While your brain is perceiving space and the beauty of newness, it's also taking some time to stretch out itself. This is why we can't understand time. Because sometimes you're just talking to someone, you're having an interesting conversation, and 2 hours flow by you. Because you're so involved in it. It feels fast. Why? Has space gotten smaller? Because you're in this confined loop of Abhijit and Ranveer? What is happening here? So it's these fascinating neuroscience concepts that sometimes can, I feel, answer these physics concepts. But I'd love the physicists to shed light on this.
So you said that the part of the brain that processes time is the same as the one that processes space.
Yeah.
So it's again a dimensional kind of thing.
Yeah.
So time does seem to be, from the perspective of the brain, a dimension, right? Now, we do experience time flowing really fast or slowing down. Maybe when we're experiencing new things and going to new places, we do feel this sensation that time stretches out and it slows down. And sometimes I've heard that when people experience some kind of accident, they see it happening in slow motion. Like, you have seconds to live, so you're going to live it to the fullest, that sort of thing. So time seems to stretch out, expand and contract within the mind. That leads to the question of, is it something the mind constructs to make sense of the world? Is it an illusion the mind constructs to make sense of the world? So that again ties into the question of what is consciousness, right? So this is a fascinating topic, but it is still not firmly in the realm of science because we can't define cognition. We can't define consciousness. Is consciousness an emergent phenomenon, or is it something that permeates the universe? Is there a quantum consciousness field out there that permeates the entire universe and we are simply local manifestations of that? Or is it something else? So these are questions that need to be asked. Maybe as of today, these are philosophical questions, not firmly in the realm of science. But science is struggling, and it is doing its best to study consciousness, because it is very important in the realm of quantum physics, because it may have possibly some kind of bearing on the actual state of the universe. Maybe if you don't look at the moon, it doesn't exist, that sort of thing. The observer effect. We don't know for sure, but the field of quantum physics has brought out incredibly strange questions to the fore, and questions that we are still not able to answer.
Would you like to hear a raw version of what spiritualism has to say about consciousness and
would
the
love
purpose
to.
of life?
Yes.
Which maybe ties in a little bit to this conversation. Again, this is not the exact accurate version of it, because I am still learning about the true nature of what I've read. This is a raw form of it. So the core purpose of human life is that, imagine that there was one being, okay? One form of consciousness, which is pure consciousness, which we refer to as God, right? That one superior being. And there might be more gods running other universes, but in our universe, there's one God, which wanted to understand itself. But it couldn't understand itself. It couldn't understand what it is. In the same way that you and me can't understand what we are. When we look at our hands, we're like, what is these hands? What are these mics? What is this podcast we're doing? We couldn't understand any of it. In the same way, that being couldn't understand itself. But that being was powerful. It was evolved. Maybe we'll reach that state of evolution one day. But for now, in order to understand itself, it took one cell from its brain and put it on its palm. Okay? That one cell is one soul, which occupies our human body. In the same way, there are billions of souls, billions of cells, which find their way to our plane, which is called the plane of the earth, our lok, where throughout our lives, as those little cells, we're supposed to find out our true nature, and we are part of God. We have that piece of God or that higher being in us. And throughout your life, you're supposed to reconnect with that human being. And when I say throughout our life, I mean throughout the journey of a soul, which could be across multiple lives. How do you get to that being? You get there through karma, and you get there through self-realization, which could happen through meditation, which could happen through study, which could happen through what people call enlightenment. What is enlightenment? That cell is rediscovering what it's actually a part of. And that's the whole process of advanced meditation, of these meditation schools, which say that just be a kind person and search for your true nature. Self-awareness, understand yourself. Your life isn't just about money. Even if it is about money, it's about what you do with that money. How do you react to situations? How do you react to places that you're placed within? When life throws difficulties at you, what do you do? So in order to understand itself, that pure consciousness created a world first, which is the earth that we know, which is all these experiences, and put us here in order to go through good and bad experiences, to understand corners of its own thought process, corners of its own mind, corners of its own consciousness. And our purpose is to get back to it. Now, from that journey, from that pure consciousness to here, we pass through many planes, which are probably governed by different forms of physics. We know all the physics that we know here, the Newton's 3 laws, etc., etc. But you speak about the quantum world, you speak about 11 dimensions. They are probably mathematical representations of all those planes we pass through. Maybe. Keeping that in mind, that's what I'd like to ask you, sir. What are those 11 dimensions? Because you spoke about time, and maybe this could be the last section of this particular podcast. It's called the mind of a scientist or mind fucking science. But so what are those 11 dimensions? Like, could you handhold us through it?
So when scientists were trying to figure out what gravity is, they realized that quantum mechanics is not able to describe gravity, because general relativity doesn't work in curved space-time. So, quantum physics doesn't work in the curved space-time of general relativity. So they thought of, how about the most fundamental entity or particle in the universe is just a one-dimensional vibrating string. And maybe the entire universe, the atoms, protons, quarks, all the fundamental particles, everything, all the interactions emerge out of these one-dimensional vibrating strings. So they tried to construct a universe out of that idea. Now they found that in order to make this idea work, the mathematics, it did not work in a 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional mathematics. They needed to have 10 or 11 dimensions to make this theory mathematically consistent. Otherwise, it would fail. So it is all in order to fit this idea of vibrating strings as the foundation of the universe that they had to construct the theory in 10 or 11 dimensions.
Maybe the string is the connection between the soul and the God.
Anything is possible. We don't know at this stage. We don't know at this stage. But what you have described to me, all these different dimensions and the single consciousness that we are part of, this essentially is Vedanta, what you're talking about. The philosophy of Vedanta talks about the fact that if there is light in space, it doesn't shine. Unless there is an object, it can shine off. So the object is, so that light is consciousness, and the object it shines off is your soul. So that is the kind of philosophy you have in Vedanta. I'm not saying it's science, it's philosophy. There is a distinction because philosophy talks about non-physical concepts and phenomena and objects, which science cannot address. And this is the reason why theoretical physicists, especially people like Bohr, Schrödinger, Heisenberg, all these pioneers of quantum physics, they invariably found themselves drawn towards Indian philosophy and Vedanta. Because these concepts, if you think deeply about them, there seem to be striking parallels. So that these ancient Indians from thousands of years ago have contemplated the things which quantum mechanics is now making us think about. They have already thought about these things, and they have created a philosophy out of it by exploring the inner universe via meditation. Physics and science is about exploring the external universe, whereas spirituality and philosophy and meditation is about exploring the inner universe. And it seems, it appears that we can find answers to the external universe by looking within as well. So there seems to be some sort of connection between the two. And that is the thing about why theoretical physicists are invariably drawn towards, once they reach a certain level of maturity and intelligence, they are drawn towards Vedanta.
I have a trippy thought that I've thought a lot about lately, which is that the concept of thoughts is that they're not our own. For example, don't tell me your name, sir. But close your mouth and don't say anything. But just think of your name. You heard a voice in your head say Abhijit. Now where did that voice come from? So there is some source of something that's even giving us our thoughts. Which means that anything you can think of. I think of a red tornado. Maybe on the surface of Venus, that red tornado is actually happening. So anything that you think of is actually there somewhere.
I have heard this before somewhere, that anything you can imagine does exist somewhere on this universe. There is a place somewhere in the enormity of the universe, that any thought, anything you can think of in your mind, no matter how abstract or ridiculous it is, it may actually exist somewhere.
Because imagine you're thinking of a very crazily drawn robot. There's a kid in South Korea who's currently drawing that robot. But because you and that kid are connected to the same consciousness, you're thinking of that thought. You're thinking of that thought through his eyes or her eyes. And that's the nature of thoughts, which is why, all these crazy thoughts we have, or the crazy thoughts that scientists have, are probably just gifts given to them by that consciousness. That, okay, you worked hard enough. Here, why don't you take this thought in your dream? And then once you wake up, show the world the truth using formulae and science.
It does feel like a gift once you see that clarity, that moment of clarity when you know the answer. It does feel like a gift from the heavens. It does. It's like a flash of light just opened up to you, and you saw the answer.
Yeah.
So you saw the truth.
Yeah, you saw the truth. Exactly.
It's the truth.
Maybe I'd like to end this podcast with kind of highlighting your PhD. You spoke about dark matter. Quickly, if you could explain what dark matter is. Again, we've done it in the first astrophysics podcast we had done with you. But if you could quickly explain dark matter, but also explain what you went through over that 10 years of just studying one subject. What happened in your mind? What did you learn about the universe? What did you learn about the nature of existence?
So dark matter is one of the missing components of the universe. If we observe the universe out there, I'll make a long story short and say that what we observe, all the stars, galaxies, all the light, all the nebulae, all the dust clouds, it's about 4% of the actual universe. 96% approximately is dark. We don't know what it is. Out of this 96%, about 23% is what we call dark matter. It is some form of matter that interacts only gravitationally. You can't. It is not visible, but you can sense its gravitational impact, right? And there is something even more mysterious, about 75% roughly, which is dark energy. And it is something that is causing the expansion of the universe, not just the expansion, but the accelerating expansion of the universe. And we can see the effect of that. And this seems to be the major component of the missing mass energy of the universe. So we have not the foggiest clue of what that is. Dark matter, we still can guess that it's some kind of particle that interacts only gravitationally. But dark energy it seems to be some form of repulsive gravity that causes space-time to expand and create itself. So that is what these concepts are. They do exist. We know that because we have now experimental evidence of the existence of these things.
But what did you learn about life? Like through that PhD? What did you learn about your own mind?
I learned, I mean, I'm not sure if my mind is the same as everybody else's mind, but I learned that the mind is almost infinite. You can construct any kind of physical theory if you know mathematics. You can play around with all kinds of concepts. You can create various forms of dark matter in the lab of your mind, and then you can test it out whether it works with the laws of physics as you know them or not. Of course, it's a labor of love. It takes a lot of time to develop these theories, but it's fun. For me, it's a game. Like you said, you have to find something to keep yourself entertained.
100%.
For me, this is a game for me. It's fun.
Also, I feel the universe is a great representation of the mind. Echoes the thought of what's happening on the outside is happening on the inside. And this is something I've kind of confirmed after getting to know you. You've taken your mind very deep in the realms of science, which has sort of expanded your abilities to think and to retain. That's something I've noticed strongly about you. And I've done 150 podcasts, 150 plus podcasts, 150 plus intelligent, successful people. But there's something very different about you. Primarily because you're a scientist. And you've expanded your mind to that degree. You've also then, once with that expanded mind, you've gone into your realms of interest, which are geopolitics and history, and kind of gone very deep in those as well. So I feel like the fundamental thing I learned from you is that your mind has the ability to become stronger, more retentive. Is that the word?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. More retentive. Like you can retain more information if you just challenge your own mind. And if your mind is, expandable, which meditation proves as well. Scientifically, there are studies that show your corpus callosum becomes stronger, your processing power of your brain gets stronger through meditation. I'm sure the same happens through study, maybe at a different pace or whatever, but it's the same concept. That's what people should gain even from these podcasts, because even to listen to this podcast till the end, you would have to turn on your nervous system and kind of keep up with the conversation, which is brain exercise. So brain exercise primarily is what I've gained from you. And even on a personal level, I've seen what 2 years of podcasting did to my own mind, perceptions, realities of the world, realities of the universe. One day I'm talking to Gauranga Das Swami, next day I'm talking to you, and then tying those two things together. Podcasting has expanded my head, and I see the difference in my own self. But also I remember being 22 and pretty much being very naive, being stupid, knowing just about fitness. Over time reading, challenging myself, and I've understood the expansive nature of the mind, which is just like the universe. So that's the big reason I even wanted to do this particular podcast, which was called Mind Effing Science, or Life of a Scientist, Life and Mind of a Scientist. But yeah, so maybe we can end this particular conversation with you saying whatever you want to. What's the end message you want to give the audience at this point?
I would say that the mind is almost infinite. I think there are areas of our mind that we haven't even accessed. I think there is no limit to what we can learn if we challenge ourselves and if we pursue our curiosity. Everybody is curious about certain things. Everybody enjoys certain activities. So if you go in that direction and try to learn about things that you don't know about, I think there is no limit to learning. Yeah. Maybe you will forget certain things while learning new things, but maybe you're forgetting things that you don't really need. So I think learning is a lifelong process. It's what makes life enjoyable. At least for me, I'm very curious. I don't think I'll ever stop learning. I have a book list that extends to the beyond my lifespan. I have so many books that I still want to read. I don't think I'll ever be able to read all of them, but keep reading, keep learning,
the everyday form of existence, if you really get observant about what's happening around you, especially conversation, most of it is gossip. Most of it is conversation about other human beings, emotional dynamics between families, between friends. The Bhagavad Gita actually says you switch off from those conversations a little bit, because that's the nature of human beings. We are biologically built for gossip, discussing other human beings, because that's what taught us to collaborate when we were Stone Age people and kind of grow societies. And we're hardwired to gossip and to enjoy things like Big Boss. But when you move away from that and find enjoyment in curiosity, rather than having curiosity just about other human beings, that's where you'll really see your mind expanding. And this is something I've practiced in my own life as well, ever since the podcast started. I've consciously moved away from rooms where gossip takes place, or people who constantly gossip, and gone into rooms like this one, gone towards people like yourself, who discuss concepts, who discuss the world, who discuss the universe, rather than discussing what someone's going through. Because what is gossip at the end of the day? Negative gossip, especially, is just a mode of making yourself feel better. By saying, oh, yeah, those people, yeah, they broke up. I'm okay. I'm at a happier state than them. My happiness levels are more than them, therefore, I am more than them. But these kind of concepts where you're not comparing yourself to another human being, but you're comparing yourself to the entire external world, this is the kind of comparison you should actually breed within your own mind. And as Ankur Varaku taught me, curiosity breeds happiness. So chase curiosity and you'll always be happy.
I agree.
So thank you, sir. Again, this was fantastic.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's lovely being here.
Likewise, sir. It's always lovely having you here. One thing I'm humbled by and I'm extremely grateful for is there's never been a single day where you said, no, I can't come for this particular podcast. You're always ready to come. I don't know what these podcasts hold for you, because I'm guessing you get to express yourself on your channel as well. But for me, I read concepts and they say that to solidify a concept, you have to talk about it to another person. So a lot of concepts are solidified when I'm spending time with you. And I'm guessing it's sort of the same for you.
It is.
Yes.
It's really enjoyable talking to you. You're an intelligent person, curious person, mind open, which is a very rare quality. So it's great fun talking to you. Even I think I learned how to express myself better via these conversations.
I'm glad, sir. On to more podcasts. This one was a science special. Next up, a history special. Usually in these outros, I end up talking about what I learned from that podcast, what I gained from that particular guest. With Abhijit Chavda, it's always extreme levels of stimulation. There's never a paragraph exchanged between us where we don't learn something from each other. At least I learn immense amounts from every sentence that leaves this man's mouth. He's someone who's become sort of a knowledge mentor to me, as I'm sure he's become to you as well. More than a mentor, he's kind of a big brother figure in my life now. We just have cool conversation like this. And, after Abhijit Chavda entered my life and the realms of the Ranveer Show, I've realized that podcasting in India is here to stay. There are gems like this man out there in India. And I'd love to know from you guys in the comment section on our social media handles, which are the gems like this who are undiscovered, who can become TRS All-Stars. Who else would you like to see on the Ranveer Show who are capable of being repeat guests? Because I'm always on the lookout for big brothers and big sisters to learn from. So let me know. And of course, follow the Ranveer Show on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. This was another gorgeous episode with Abhijit Chavda. The Ranveer Show will be back soon.